Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Ask Me Anything for the CrossFit Linchpin private track. This, of course, happens in the Facebook group, coolest place on earth. And today is November 5th, 2020. Got some wonderful questions as usual. I've checked them out an hour or so ago, made myself a little list, and got some notes organized so that I wouldn't just. So I'd keep my crazy scatterbrain on track. So let's dive right in. First one, the most upvoted, is from Mr. Saint Amon, and here is what he has to say. How do you recommend overcoming fears that may hold back your training? For example, people that have a mental block about box jumps, or getting upside down for handstand work, or fear of injury, perhaps fear of re-injury after coming back from an injury. Excellent question, and very common. So here are just some ways that have worked for me or have worked for folks that I've spoken with. So in general, baby steps are a good thing, and building up confidence that is a hedge against failure is also a good thing, and so we'll talk about that. So for box jumps, very common fear. Starting small is your friend, and small might be just jumping on a 45-pound plate that you lay on the ground. And if the jump is too much, then step up, step down, step up, step down. If you get to the point where jumping onto a 45-pound plate is confident, feel good, two 45-pound plates, or a 45 and a 25. But point being, with some bumper plates, you can start really small and then work your way up to, whatever the desired height happens to be. I have also experienced somebody that had such a fear of jumping that what was appropriate to start with was actually drawing a chalk line across the floor and then getting them to just have both feet leave the ground at the same time and jump over the chalk line on the floor. So you never know where people are, what they've got going on with any fears that they may have, and having a conversation on trying to understand what that is and then meeting them where they are and figuring out a roadmap that sets them up for success and makes them feel comfortable is a great thing to do. So for the box jumps, start small, play it safe, go up, have a spotter there if the person feels more comfortable doing that, a hand right near them in case they do get a bit unstable, or if the height's starting to get a bit higher and we're in that, zone of you're not fully sure if you're going to land it. Hopefully you've built up, but if they do feel a bit nervous, a spotter's good. And I've also seen people kind of self-spot. You obviously want to be careful with this. Common sense is a wonderful thing. But they could have one hand on something very sturdy, be it the upright of a pull-up bar or a wall, something that you're not going to fall and tumble on, again, the common sense factor. And then they're kind of latched onto that thing as they build up the height of their jump little by little so they feel a bit more secure. And then eventually they can let that thing go, maybe have the spotter, and life is good. For the handstand walk, we actually just had a new member of Linchpin posting about this today, so it's actually very timely, this question. And she was experiencing just this. Kicking up against the wall was very nerve-wracking. She had some success, then it went away for a week, and so on and so forth. So for going upside down, handstand work, handstand push-ups, or just a handstand hold against the wall, a lot of people are scared about that. And there are, again, crawl, walk, run approach, right? So first of all, you can get a plank position on the floor, just hold that. Then you can get like an elevated box or something like that and do a plank from a box position. And then from the plank on a box position, you can go into a pike on a box position, and that builds some upside down confidence. Then moving towards the wall, again, if the kicking up is an issue, they can kick from standing, or they can start from their knees and kick up from their knees, which sometimes lends people with a little confidence. Having a nice cushy mat or something, in case the kick does not go how you want it to, so you're not falling on hard concrete, is a great thing as well. And then a spotter is also a fantastic thing, to help the person get themselves up against the wall, help guide the legs up there, and they have that extra secure feeling that somebody's there is not going to let them come crashing down. But then the other part of a good procedure anyway for kicking against the wall is shoulder strength. I don't think that gets addressed enough. So your pressing ability, build up a good strong shoulder press so that, some people don't have a fear of kicking against the wall, but when they finally kick upside down, they learn that their shoulder strength is lacking. They can't hold their body weight upside down, and then they tumble to the ground and bonk their head. So you don't want that to happen. So on top of the confidence portion, what might aid them in giving more confidence is if they know they have a good, strong overhead press, and then once they get upside down, they're not going to have any issue just pressing out, locking out, and being rock solid and secure there. So that can be your friend as well. And then the coming back from an injury, this is certainly an area that I've got a lot of expertise in, not from CrossFit, but the military and motorcycle wrecks, whether it's, when I busted my pelvis, I had to learn everything again, everything, to include, walking and all that good stuff. And I had very little confidence in using that leg and my right side. And I've separated my AC joint horrifically. I've had a hernia that I had to get repaired, an umbilical hernia. And that was a tough one to come back from mentally because, I got the mesh put in there. But then, you use your midline in everything. When you talk, when you laugh, when you sneeze, even if you're not working out and you just are sitting in a chair and you go from a seated to a standing position. Before your lower extremities lift you up, your midline braces, whether you realize it or not. And if you just had a surgery like a hernia surgery or whatnot, you're very aware of your midline, and then you might get a little twinge of pain when that happens, and you're not even lifting any weight. You're just going from a seated to a standing position. And the thought of, receiving a full clean or a squat clean or pulling a heavy deadlift or anything, you're like, oh, whoa, that feels crazy. So anytime I've been in that situation, as I try to turn off my idiotic knucklehead barbarian brain and make intelligent decisions and basically take all the time that I needed to recover and heal and not rush back into training. Rushing back into training, getting back in the gym, doing things before you should is a great way to not come back 100%, to come back at like 70 or 80% and be there the rest of your life. So I would rather, instead of rushing back to 75% for years, take my time, delay it a little bit, and then come back to 100% for the remainder of my life. So give your body the time that it needs, and whenever that happened to me as well, I would also, to the best of my ability, keep working out, but again, making smart decisions and just working around whatever it was that I happened to have going on, because it's really tough starting from ground zero. And very few things, in my opinion, I'm not giving out medical advice, so whatever legal disclaimers I need to make in 2020 in our litigious society, I'm not telling you what to do, consult a physician, blah, blah, blah. But, very few injuries or surgeries result in you being 100% incapable of doing anything at all, right? Zero, zilch. So even when I busted my pelvis, I could have been doing, as long as I didn't, jolt my lower body, I could have become a strict pull-up god. When I separated my AC joint on one side, I did one arm everything for as long as I could, to include very slow getting up and down off the ground, one arm burpees. And the burpee didn't look like anything like a regular burpee. I would casually get down. I would get all the way on the ground. I would get onto my knees. I wouldn't jump in and jump out. I'd press up. I did one-arm dumbbell thrusters, one-arm ring rows, one-arm whatever it was, one-arm deadlifts, squats, the whole 9 yards, and I just didn't use that other arm. And of course, contrary to popular belief, at the end of doing that for several months, it wasn't like my one side that I kept using looked like Arnold Schwarzenegger or Lou Ferrigno, and the other side had wasted away to nothing. Like that's I think a myth, an urban legend. And the other side, once I could start using it, came back really fast, and I truly believe that's because I didn't just let the other side go to absolutely zero. So I think there's a lot of benefit in continuing to do what you can do intelligently and not impeding the progress of whatever that surgery or injury happened to be. Now, with something like my umbilical hernia, like I said, the midline couldn't do anything. That was a very frustrating injury to come back from. And all I could do from that, I asked the doctor if basically all I said was walk and like walk upstairs. And that's it. Couldn't pick anything up, couldn't do anything. And I couldn't like brace my midline, even to like do a ring row or anything. So I did very monotonous training for several months. Since I could walk upstairs, I just put a 20-inch box in my garage, and every other day I would walk out into my garage, and at low intensity I would do 45 minutes of box step-ups, unweighted, because he said I could walk upstairs. That's really all a box step-up is. And low intensity and just casually, but I would move my body every other day, 45 minutes of unweighted, just step-ups onto a box. It was absolutely torturous, but at the same time, it was something. At the same time, it kept my body moving, and it was, for how I'm wired anyway, absolutely mission critical for me not to lose my sanity. So, baby steps, be smart, don't rush it back, especially after an injury. But at some point in time, when you've given whatever that injury happens to be, if you have truly, you haven't messed it up, given it the time that your physician says you should have given it, and at whatever date in the calendar goes by, they say, from that date forward, you should be considered like you're just like you were beforehand. At some point, you have to trust that that is the case, and I had to trust that I did actually give it the time to heal, and that I could start deadlifting again, with intelligence and all those things. And there was just a curve to come back from all that, but it's certainly possible. Okay, hopefully that helps. Next question was from Derek Hill. Okay, I shut off my ringer on my phone, but for some reason that phone call snuck through. Said it was a spam risk. Nobody wants to get a spam risk phone call in the middle of an Ask Me Anything. All right, Derek Hill, where is your exact question so that I don't mess it up? Okay, here we go. Oof. I appreciate that Derek at least labeled it on the front as a rabbit hole. So here we go. Nutrition rabbit hole. Eat to levels that sustain exercise but not body fat is simple but not easy. There's no one right prescription, it seems. Inside a CrossFit community, I think that it may lead to under-eating and reducing performance over time. As one eats too little, still wants to lean out, lose the love handles, and either add more workouts or eat less or both. What's your nutrition advice for us, given that we are already dedicated to fitness and a better lifestyle, at least somewhat by being members? Is it contrary to what you'd tell a sedentary person, or do you think one thing can work for all? So he says, in summary, nutrition advice to keep us from potentially under-eating. Potentially under-eating. Yes, that is, if you are super dedicated with what you're eating and you're eating mostly lean chicken breast and broccoli, yeah, you may not get everything that you need on just the amount of volume you'd have to eat of broccoli would make you retch onto the ground. So yes, there is the potential for somebody who's quite strict to be under-eating. What I would recommend that you do is seek out somebody whose whole world revolves around nutrition. That is their expertise. My recommendation would be Eva Claire Sinkowski, E.C. Sinkowski from Optimize Me Nutrition. You can find her at Optimize Me Nutrition online, Instagram, the whole 9 yards. She's a wealth of information. And, again, legal disclaimer for whatever we have to do. I'm not giving out nutrition advice, but I've got a feeling if you think that you're under eating, what you'd have to do is establish some sort of baseline so that you figure out, what do you need given your size, your age, your activity level, the whole 9 yards. Then once you establish that baseline, you'll have to track what you're currently eating normally to see, are you falling shy of that baseline? Are you nailing it? Or are you right over? So tracking your macros in one way, shape, or form is probably going to come into play there just to see where you are. And then once you have the baseline established, once you have tracked how you're eating, then you can go ahead and adjust as needed to hit that mark that you so desperately want to hit. And there's potentially a lazier way to do that, which is if you do think you truly are under eating, then, if you eat like a lot of people do, roughly the same thing day after day. A lot of breakfasts look the same, lunches, dinners, and so it's consistent, and you do feel like you are under eating, then you could potentially add a bit to each meal, or add, some sort of shake or something that's a little bit more dense with calories somewhere during the day. Do that for a couple weeks, And as long as you haven't dramatically changed anything else, you'll get somewhat of a rough idea of, are you feeling better, same, or worse? And I know that's not hardcore NASA nuclear science, but it might be a lazy way to give you a rough idea. But if you truly want to do it and want to do it right, then you're going to have to do, kind of what I said initially. Reach out to somebody like EC from Optimize Me Nutrition, figure out what your actual needs are, then go ahead and track the macros, and then go ahead and recalibrate as needed so that you take all the guesswork right out of it. And each person is a bit different, and so yeah, you want to make sure you're humming right in your own sweet spot. Next question is from Eric Anderson. Eric, where are you? Let me take a peek here. Give me a second. Eric Anderson. Okay, this will be a quick one. What do you do for barbell maintenance, if anything? I do nothing. Literally nothing. Absolutely zilch, zero. I'm sorry. I know that's probably some sort of just blasphemy in the world of working out and, people that are just hardcore about their gear. Now, don't get me wrong, my barbells aren't rusty. I don't leave them out in the rain. I just use them in my garage, and then I set them back in the barbell holder, and they stay there until they're called into service again. I have never done a lick of anything to any of them. I drop them in my garage with bumper plates, and I do not have matting on the floor in my garage. I have no horse stall matting, no nothing. It is just a concrete floor. It's been that way for years, so I drop the barbells with the bumpers onto a hard concrete floor every single day. I've done it for years, and I have never had a single barbell failure in any way, shape, or form. I'm not saying that that is what you should do, but I don't want to sit here and lie to you. And maybe that's going to bite me in the butt sometime in the future, probably so. But I will say, some of my good old Rogue barbells I've had for, I don't even know, a decade, maybe? And they spin beautifully and work beautifully, so it's maybe that's lulled me into a false sense of everything being good, but I don't do anything. There's certainly some people out there, and there's been some great barbell maintenance threads on the private Facebook group, so if you want to know what other folks do, post that again. I'm sure you'll get some great instruction or whatnot, but I think you will be disappointed with my answer. But my apologies, but that's the true answer right there about my barbell maintenance schedule. Ooh, Jackson Tyler. Good question about kids and working out. Let me make sure that I read it properly. Here we go. Jackson Tyler. Do you encourage your kids to work out in some way, shape, or form, or do you let it be completely up to them? Encourage is a great word. So do I encourage? I encourage them to be active and to play sports and to get outside and to shut off their electronics and to go into the woods and get dirty and that kind of stuff. I don't shut the door, don't get me wrong, but I encourage them through that and through trying to be an example of just living a good, healthy lifestyle. And so they see me and their mom, working out constantly, chit-chatting about why we're choosing some particular thing to eat or not eat constantly. And, my kids are interested in sports, and so that will lead to questions about improving performance in sports. And we'll have a little conversation about some musculature or the benefits of maybe, pushing a prowler or doing some box jumps or burpees or pull-ups or deadlift, and, things like that. And every now and then I'll work out and I'll be like, hey, buddy, I'm going to come into the gym. Do you want to do something? And usually their answer is no. And that's okay. And that's the end of the conversation. I go, okay, well, I'll be out there if you change your mind. Because I don't want to go down that slippery slope so encouraging is different than forcing, right? There's a good way to say it. And yeah, some positive encouragement, but if their answer is no, then I leave it at that. I've never forced them to work out, and every now and then they'll put a little something together, and that's cool. But at this age, they're 9 and 11 right now, they're overwhelmingly just concerned with playing sports. They don't want to go in the garage and do that stuff. They just want to play sports. And I hope one day that shifts a little bit, to allowing me to augment them with their strength and conditioning so they get a bit more power out there on the field, but we'll see if that happens or not. What my youngest, the 9-year-old Nash, is very interested in doing is all the gear that Emily and I have accumulated for the garage. He's got no interest in working out with it, but he'll enjoy going into the garage, moving all kinds of stuff around, and making his own like American Ninja Warrior course. And then he'll do things that in no way, shape, or form are the intent of how that gear was supposed to be used from the manufacturer. And he will jump from, the reverse hyper to the curved padding on the GHD and somehow not fall on the floor. And then he'll jump off the GHD and grab one of the rings that are hanging from the ceiling and swing across the rings to the pull-up bar and grab the pull-up bar and do all kinds of things that make me very nervous. But he's just being a kid, and he's moving his body and doing some cool stuff. And so he enjoys doing that. But they're very infrequently now is something that looks like a quote-unquote, workout. So again, hopefully that changes a little bit. But for now, that's where we are. All right. Cameron, your question was next. Cameron, where are you, sir? Where's your question? Here we go. All right. What do you do when PRs slow down? When I started CrossFit, it seemed to always be forward progression. I was faster every time. Now I get the odd PR. My PRs are harder to beat, and there are days when I am more fatigued and can't get to the same level. How do you adjust those expectations, and how do you know you are still making forward progress? Wonderful question. And something that all of us face at different points in our life. Some may face it earlier in their CrossFit career, and some may face it later. And it all depends on when you started, what age you were, how much capacity did you walk into the program with or not walk into the program with, what kind of dents and defenders, or injuries did you have walking into the program, and then even if maybe you've been working out your whole life, have you been working out at low intensity or high intensity? Have you been doing isolation movements or functional movements, etc., etc.? And so there's a lot of different factors that come into play as to how long, it will be PR city on a frequent and regular basis, and then when will that start to slow down? When will it start to be infrequent? And then, the other side, and Cameron, you're not there yet, you're in your mid-30s, but then the other side of it is, at some point in time, it will be your last PR of fill in the blank. For example, so if you started CrossFit at 25 years old and you do it your entire life, we've got masters athletes that are doing it in their 60s and 70s. So if you start at 25 and you work out for your next 50 years doing CrossFit, you will not PR Fran every decade that goes by. There will be some phase or season in your life that some Fran time where you will never beat it ever again, and every time you do Fran, it will be a little bit slower. Or then you'll get to the phase in your life where the prescribed loading might be a bit too much, and that goes down a little bit. Or the pull-ups change to ring rows because now you're, 69, 68, 71, whatever it happens to be. And now again, that's the long, broad view, right? So things that I think could help you is I would recommend going back and listening to Linchpin conversations either on the CrossFit Linchpin YouTube channel or the podcast. Linchpin Conversations number 64, and the topic of that is the fitness stock market, and that kind of helps you take a long view of your fitness. I think you'd find that beneficial. And then, at least at the recording of this, I would also recommend going and watching, it's not posted yet as a podcast, but it's on our YouTube channel, Linchpin Conversations number 116, and that's 21 common pitfalls, and those 21 common pitfalls can impede progress and hold you back a little bit. And maybe you're falling victim to some of them, and maybe you're not. But getting back to your question, so yes, that's very common. New to CrossFit, lots of PRs. Been around CrossFit for a while, less PRs. Been around CrossFit for a very long time, infrequent PRs. And then if you keep doing it for decades and decades and decades, you'll have to change your mindset as you modify workouts. Maybe you can consider them new workouts, and therefore, can always be quote-unquote PRing. But for example, so today's Thursday, if we take something like Tuesday's workout, which was 5 sets of 3 deadlift, I believe, Tuesday's workout was programmed not for you to PR your deadlift triple. Now, if you did, great, that's fantastic. That's just icing on the cake. But that's not why triples were programmed on Tuesday. Triples were programmed on Tuesday because based upon where we'd been in the course of the last week or two in programming and where we were going, we needed to pull heavy triples from the ground. That's just how it worked out in the flow of things. So it wasn't, again, we are, at least in my mind, this is how I view things. I move my body using CrossFit in an intelligently designed and thoughtfully programmed manner in order to maintain the highest level of pain-free health and fitness that I possibly can. Okay, that's what I do. Not necessarily to PR. When I do, that's just great, but that's why I do what I do. And when a session in the gym yields a personal best, well, that's great, but that's not what drives me. So how incredible I feel is what drives me, and working out in a manner that is sustainable for decades inspires me to keep doing it. So hopefully that helps in any way, shape, or form. And the variance is a wonderful thing in CrossFit, which really greatly extends the PRs for quite some time because we do so many different things, right? I mean, if it was just the same repetitive thing all the time, it would be more plainly obvious as to why you couldn't PR for the rest of your life. If you didn't do CrossFit and all you did was Monday, Wednesday, Friday, the same 5K run in your neighborhood, and that's all you did for fitness, it would be very obvious and unrealistic to think that every time you go out there, you will beat the previous day's run that you did just 48 hours ago. Totally not going to happen. Now, at some point in time, you'll go out there and go on that run, and oh, geez, got a PR today. Didn't see that coming. And then you may have a bad week, and then you got a good week, and just, the ups and downs of life and sleep and nutrition and stress and everything else. So we're very lucky, and the variance is a very wonderful thing in CrossFit that we can expand our runway of improvement for a very, very long time through the use of intelligently programmed variance. But yes, PRs happen less frequently as you continue to train, and that timeline is a bit different for everybody. And finding something between your ears that still makes you happy when those PRs start to happen less frequently is just something we all have to deal with. There's a really good chance that I might never break my Fran time. Fran was one of my better workouts. I don't mind thrusters, as odd as that is to say, and a 2159 is a pull-up structure that I can handle fairly well, so Fran's always been a decent workout for me. And I might be at the point in my life where my lifetime best, I'll never take it down again. I'll never beat my lifetime best. I don't even know if I want to suffer that much as my lifetime PR hurt. I have to separate myself. That doesn't mean I'm still not getting fit. That doesn't mean I'm still not doing things in the gym every single day. These wonderful functional movements, with intelligently designed and laid out to keep me as healthy, as strong, and as pain-free and as capable as possible for every year that ticks forward. And so, I hope that helps. Cameron. Okay. Kind of the final question. All right. From Philip Isles. Philip, here we go. All right. Is this the one? Yes, interval workouts. On interval workouts, my first round is always vastly faster than my last. For example, on last week's clean and jerk med ball clean burpee workout, my first round was 2 minutes and 30 seconds, and my last round was 5 minutes and 8 seconds. Clearly, I have a weakness, but I don't know what it is. How do I attack this? Where do I start? Excellent question. Okay. So pacing on interval workouts. Now, Philip, you say that you're sure that you have a weakness. I'm not sure. You might be right. Maybe you do. Do you have a weakness, or is it just improper pacing? If you do have a weakness, okay, then it would show up in some interval workouts and not others, right? Because the movements would be different. If it is a weakness in a movement, a modality, a rep range, a time domain, etc., then that weakness will reveal itself, because you won't be cherry-picking workouts. You'll be exposed over time to plenty of variance. You'll be able to track with your times, your loadings, to be on the whiteboard app, and you'll be able to see, do you actually have a true weakness in a particular movement, loading, modality, etc., etc. And if so, then that's good news. Don't worry about it, because all the training that we're doing is to bring up all areas of your fitness, and with patience and time, that area will improve. And if you find a little piece of the accessory work that maybe really fits into that particular weakness well, then that can be something that you embrace, and you speed up the process a little bit. But maybe you don't have a weakness, right? Maybe it's just simply improper pacing on workouts. And pacing is something that a lot of people can struggle with. When I see an interval workout or a 6x400 meter repeat day, right? I mean, those are just intervals. I recommend that you pace it for the totality of the workout. And so if there's 5 intervals, and like what you mentioned, let's take the 6x400 meter repeat. I think that I have to exert myself in a way that should allow me to, when I add up all the times of those 6 400 meter repeats, what will give me the lowest overall time. And that's the level of effort I'm going to try to put in general, okay? In general. Because what I could do, and that means I'm not trying to PR my first 400 meter run. Because if I do, and I go out like a bat out of hell, and I set my own personal best, and it just crushes me, it's every fiber of energy I had in every cell of my body, that will most likely be something I don't really recover that well from, and it will affect the 5 other 400 meter repeats that occur, and then at the end of it, those other 5 will have been, maybe I was 10 seconds faster on that first 400 meter run than most of my normal historical runs, but then I was 7 seconds slower on the 5 remaining. And so at the end of the day, overall, I did a bit worse on that 6x400 meter repeat day. So I want to go in at a pace that is sustainable given the totality of the workout. Now, I might go in on days, in this example I'm giving, and, hit the first one moderately, the second one moderately, and then if I'm feeling good, maybe intentionally on that third 400 repeat, I say, you know what? I'm going to try for a lifetime best today because I'm warm, I'm feeling good, and even if that causes me to crash and burn on the remaining 400 meter repeats, I don't care. I'm giving everything I have into this interval. That's okay too. But what I have found is, in like the interval workout that you mentioned the other day, the clean and jerks, the med ball cleans, the bar facing burpees, I rarely go into interval number 1, even with the mindset that I just said. I think of it in the totality of the workout, and I have to do something which is high intensity relative to my capacity, given the fact that there's 5 intervals. But even with that, I hold back just a little bit on interval number 1, and I kind of feel it out. And 9 times out of 10, what happens is that slightly holding it back pace actually turns out to be the right pace and tough to hold on to as interval 2, 3, 4, and 5 compound. I've had that happen a lot, that the pace that I think was a little conservative on interval number 1 is no longer conservative on interval number 3 after the fatigue is set in. But every now and then, if it actually does turn out to have been a little bit conservative, well then I don't mind that because I felt it out a bit. I was still working hard, don't get me wrong, and now I go into interval number 2 almost setting myself up for a win, because since I held back just a bit on number 1, I'm probably either going to tie my time on number 2 or maybe do it a couple seconds faster, which feels good. So it can be a little mental game that I play with myself as well. But like I said, often that slightly conservative pace turns out to be right where I should be. Okay, that was the final question. I'm going to do some of the shout-outs now. So remember, I try to take some screenshots over the course of the week of cool things that have happened, and then do some little shout-outs at the end here. So here are screenshots I've taken from the Linchpin private track. All right, this is from Chelsea, who took a photo of her, and she says her 14-month-old decided she was going to learn burpees today. and she's never obviously taught her. This was completely unprompted, and it's true that the choices you make are important because children are always watching. So super cool. So she's out there doing burpees, and her 14-month-old daughter just starts doing burpees with her. So it's a pretty cool role model. All right, what is this one? Says huge 800-meter PR. This is from Joseph Michael Gregory. Can I just say, wow, huge victory for me. Still slow compared to some, if not most of you, but not only an almost 1.5 minute PR, but also taking a minute out of the rest interval as well. It says some nice things about Linchpin programming. I very much appreciate that. It's been following for about 4 months, but he, over the course of, it was the day we programmed 3 800-meter repeats, and his total time, the first time he did it, he then had a 1.5-minute reduction the second time we did the 3 by 800-meter repeats, and he took less rest between the intervals. So that is a massive overall improvement given the fact that he even rested less. Oh, Cameron, we got one from you here. Cameron Talley. I tagged this one as smart decision. So Cameron says, I tried the lowering muscle-ups, and as soon as I hit the bottom of my dip, my triceps verbally told me to cease and desist. I scaled to toe-assisted lowering muscle-ups and got myself some fitness anyway. So, started to do some lowering muscle-ups, maybe potentially with very little leg, kind of strict, felt his tricep be a little grouchy, and then used a tremendous amount of leg in order to not continue making his tricep feel grouchy. I love that. Scaling. It's listening to your body. It's smart decisions. So I encourage you to continue doing smart decisions. And then what do we got here? Colin Jacobson. Few things. Finally got all the pull-ups without a band. First time snatching since I hurt my shoulder and trying it for the first time. Did overhead squats and didn't give up. So huge day. First pull-ups, snatching, doing some overhead squats, feeling pain-free. So Colin Jacobson, well done. Congratulations. And that's about it. All right. Well, have a great day. Enjoy your rest day, everybody. And we will once again talk soon into the Linchpin community. Thanks for being cool.